From management consulting to scaling an info product course to 8 figures in annual revenue, to now becoming the go-to headhunter for high-growth e-com brands, Ugis has done it all.
Yeah, one side is what I mentioned, we're worked really hard, I think, even if it compares to some of the top players. Now, maybe not the very top, but we were really solid in.
After exiting his info product company at the height of the Facebook ads boom, he traded funnels and email campaigns for a new challenge, helping fast-growing e-com brands find world-class talent.
And one of them was talking about hiring and how it's not going well, but this is his plan. And I'm listening to it. I'm like, okay, that's not how I do it. I said, hey, let's chat for maybe an hour, 2 hours. I'll explain how we hired and how we were recruiting. At one point he went, okay, this is awesome advice, but it would be great if someone could just do it for me. And I was like, okay, that could potentially be business.
In today's episode, we dive into the playbook for building high-performing teams.
You have the marketing team, you have the sales team, you have tech team, and then the customer success and whatever else. It can get quite complicated.
How to identify the key levers that truly move the needle in your business.
It's what your business needs. So I think it's gone both ways, where people are generally just more open to being international for sure.
And how to avoid the "I'll just do it myself" trap that keeps founders stuck.
I think it was something where I always assumed that, okay, if someone's going to do it well, it's going to be me. And I don't think that's really true, especially at a certain stage at a business.
So if you're serious about scaling your e-commerce business and you want the inside track on recruiting the kind of talent that could take you from 7 to 9 figures, then this is the episode for you.
Hiring someone is expensive. Having a bad hire is super expensive. So in my mind, I do everything I can to maximize that person.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying the videos, why not consider subscribing? We drop bi-weekly content that will help you improve your business right here on the channel. Ugis, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Cool. Jumping straight into it then, because I know you've had quite a varied background. Can you just walk me through kind of how you got started in the online space and what it is exactly you do today?
Yeah. So when I first got out of university, even during university time, I was in management consulting, and I did that for a few years. And then I quit that. I thought it's getting too corporate. And then a friend of mine approached me because he had a successful online business. And at that time he had just had a launch and he made $90,000. And we both thought, oh my God, he's rich. So he's made it. And he wanted to build a company. He asked me to join. And over time, I also became a co-owner of the company. And that was in online courses, iPhone photography, out of all niches. But we did well, and we kind of, I would say, maximized it. So we were really good at performance marketing. So SEO, Facebook ads, copywriting, email marketing, funnels, all those sort of things. And then we scaled that to 8 figures. And eventually I sold my shares in the company. And then something called me towards recruitment. And today I'm a headhunter for e-commerce companies. And that's my current business, Recruiter Mill.
Okay. Out of interest, how long did you do in the corporate world before you escaped?
So it's funny. So after 1 year in university, it also didn't last super long. I was okay. I need to be doing something. This is not it. And I still finished my degree, but kind of that wasn't the focus in the kind of years 2 and 3. And I wanted to be doing something, to be working. And it's funny. My brother had a dream where I was some sort of financial analyst. And he told me that, and he said, oh, you should apply to all these banks, insurance companies. I ended up at a management consulting firm, and I did that in parallel to university. That was really fun. I mean, lots of interesting projects, but about 2.5 years in, I kind of, I think, saw the game for what it was, where I looked at some of the partners in that company, and I mean, I have respect for them, but I also knew that that's not the life I wanted for me, and kind of had some savings and was like, okay, I'll learn programming and I'll just quit and hang out, and never learned programming, but got approached by my friend.
Okay. And then your friend and the kind of info business that you ran there, what was the kind of ticket price and how early were you guys in the kind of info space?
Yeah, I think he started it at the perfect time. I joined at a time where it could really scale. So he started the blog in 2011, I believe. So a really, really nice time for that. And then I joined 2015, and that I don't know if you remember, but that was like the golden age for Facebook ads, and that's 1 year in, maybe even less. We really unlocked it for us, and that kind of took the business to the next level. So it was around that time, and then I exited in 2020, right before the pandemic. It could have been a better time, but still, because that was great for that business. But yeah, 2015 to 2020.
Okay. And what ticket price were the products that you guys were?
Oh yeah, so it varied a little bit. I think the last we did was $67 for a course teaching iPhone photography, and then there was a $300 upsell teaching editing, and there were some more upsells. There was like a brand teaching photography with a regular camera as well, with a similar structure. So, but yeah, it was all low ticket. At one point, we were kind of playing around with adding high ticket, but we decided that it's too much. Like basically, it would be photography trips, and we're like, okay, that's too much of a headache. But had we pulled that off, I think it would have scaled the business even more.
Okay, but getting to 8 figures on kind of a low ticket kind of price is pretty insane.
You're not supposed to, I don't think.
Certainly, without unlocking that
Yeah.
kind of back end is I don't hear that much.
Yeah. I think yeah. One side is what I mentioned, where we really worked really hard. I think even if you compares to some of the top players now, maybe not the very top, but we were really solid in performance marketing. And then we had this really nice Facebook ads pixel that kind of knew which people are likely to convert. And I think generally we were liked by the advertisers, or kind of the Facebook and whatever as well, because people generally really like their product as well.
Nice. Okay. And by the time you left, could you talk to kind of the team structure that you guys actually had at that business, and maybe contrast that with when you joined?
Yeah. So we had back then like a tech team of about 5 people, and that was because back then all the software that you needed for funnels and just running your marketing, even like your CRM, some of it was there, but it wasn't that great. And again, for us to do our absolute best, we just took it in house. So we had a tech team, we had a content team, several editors, content managers, things like that. We had a blog editor, a customer support person, a couple of people helping with the administration of the company, and then altogether it was maybe in the area of 15 to 20.
Interesting. And then I guess eventually, what led to you wanting to leave the business and ultimately kind of start Recruiter Mill and what you do today?
Yeah, I never liked photography, so I just kind of saw a nice opportunity and went for it. I think it was slightly different for my co-founder. He's still in the business and he does like photography. But at one point, we were both kind of talking about selling and doing something else and moving on. And he made kind of the opposite realization a few months before he offered to buy me out. And I was ready to move on anyway. So yeah, he offered to buy me out.
Okay, and then what was the journey like from kind of exit to starting the new business?
Yeah, so I was at the time, at least, I was feeling maybe a bit stressed out, or when I was working in the business, I felt like I'm not in the right spot necessarily. And then once again, it's maybe a theme. I thought to myself, okay, I'll just learn programming. I'll read books, chill out a little bit, and that lasted, I don't know, maybe 2 months, maybe a little more. But I mean, that year I had like 75 books on my Goodreads, and I was doing some programming. But at one point, I realized, okay, there are millions of people that are better than me and that have put in the years. It's like I might as well do what I'm already good at, and that's a bit more rare of a skill. So, and then at one point, I was still kind of meeting my friends, the business owners, for dinners, and one of them was talking about hiring and how it's not going well, but this is his plan. And I'm listening to it. I'm like, okay, that's not how I do it. So basically, I pulled him aside after the dinner, said, hey, let's chat for maybe an hour, 2 hours. I'll explain how we hired and how we were recruiting. And he really loved that. And at one point he went, okay, it would be great if, this is awesome advice, but it would be great if someone could just do it for me. And I was like, okay, that could potentially be a business.
Okay. I just want to, before we get into that, I just want to go back to your kind of mini
Yeah.
retirement. Why did you
Yeah.
get kind of bored? And I get what you're saying about kind of the programming and stuff, but why not just chill out? You'd sure for
Yeah,
sure.
I wish I could do it. But I think there's just kind of a lack of purpose. And then you're just like a sack of meat, sitting online on your computer or on your phone. And it's nice to maybe do that for a week, even if you haven't had that chance for a while. But it doesn't feel great in the long term. You want to do something that's meaningful. And at the time, I was like 29, so probably a bit early to retire. Also, in terms of money, I mean, it was a nice exit, 7 figures, but it wasn't like I'm set for life. So I was like, okay, I will need to do something anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. And then touching on kind of what you said there, how did the experience building the info business kind of translate to what you do today and think about how you build teams?
Yeah. So I think one of those things that I really took with me, and honestly, what I see with my best clients is that this advice of, hey, use the 80/20 principle in building a company. I think it's at the very least overused. I think what I saw in kind of our success and what I see with many of my clients is that uh, they really they choose the right things to work on, and then they kind of the word I keep returning to is maximize it. So they do it as well as they can, and that's kind of the principle that I think, unless you've gone through it, your natural assumption is that yeah, I'll 80/20 it. Here are like 10 things that need to happen, and I'll do them like kind of okay. I'll do like all of them kind of okay, but usually there are one or two things that really matter, and you need to do those really well. So that's kind of the probably biggest learning point. On the negative side, so still, I mean, we scaled it to a nice level, but we weren't at a stage where I think our stage was good, but we didn't have enough of kind of growth ahead of us. So we couldn't really attract. Not that we tried, but it wouldn't make sense for us to really attract director level talent. And it was always this feeling that okay, we have to do it ourselves. And I'm still like recovering from that. I still do that in my business, and I'm getting better definitely. But I think it was something where I always assumed that okay, I can't it's if someone's going to do it well, it's going to be me, and I don't think that's really true, especially at a certain stage at a business. So yeah, that was maybe a learning, and that wasn't necessarily correct.
Okay. Just double tapping on that. What is director level talent? Like, what do you mean by that? And what are the key attributes of that person?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of salary, just to keep it simple, it's probably in the States at least it's 6 figures. In Europe, maybe you can get someone. You can, I know for a fact that you can get someone under 6 figures, but someone who's earning well, and then typically that's not maybe where most business owners start, but I think that gives them an idea. But kind of for someone with that sort of salary, you expect that they'll take a function, they own it. Obviously, they'll consult with you when necessary, but they can basically take their work start to finish. And that's the sort of talent that in some areas we had it, but we were onboarding those people for a long time. There was no one that we just plucked from somewhere and said, "Hey, go to work," and they did. We never really had that experience back then.
Okay, so just to confirm, if you're, let's say, looking at an agency like mine, you mean by that bringing in a director of marketing that can kind of take that
Yeah,
marketing function to the next level?
that's right. Yeah.
Okay, and it's no kind of oversight or not as much oversight and training, and it's like, here's your KPIs, here's the goals, off you go.
That's right. Yeah, and usually they will have done it before in a very similar capacity, so it's kind of easy to rely on them for that.
Okay, you mentioned something else that I definitely kind of do a lot of, and it's kind of trying to or thinking you're the best person to do every role yourself. How do you break that mindset in founders? Because I'm sure a lot of people you work with now have that as well.
Yeah, I think step one is reaching a certain stage of a business, and I think there is a stage of business where you actually would do that, and then as you're growing, you're probably in this like kind of tricky area where you need to switch up your MO a little bit to be able to grow. And then I feel like once you've gone through that, you're like, oh, what was I doing, right? When you have your first 1, 2, 3 really good hires, you kind of realize, okay, this actually can't happen, and I've been making a mistake. But also, it comes with the scale of a business, and generally, it is like this director level talent that we help companies hire, and it's for e-commerce businesses because the margins are lower. It's typically at a pretty reasonable scale, like maybe around 2 million a month is when they start talking to us. And then for agencies, tech companies, it's lower. It's maybe at 3 million a year. And I think when they come to me, they've already realized that, okay, this is something I need to do if I want to keep growing.
Okay. And then before we move on, just going back to what you said about the kind of 80-20, and you need to pick the key areas to focus on and, be super A star at. How do you identify those areas? And then how do you get to the next level at them?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think some of it is just kind of seeing what other companies at that stage have done, what's really helped them. And if we're talking about e-commerce businesses specifically, it's, I mean, at 7 and even 8 figures, it's almost exclusively going to be about creative strategy. So if you can have really great creatives, you'll figure everything else out basically. And so you see that, oh, okay, these guys, they're like 3 times bigger than we are. They just invested in creative strategy, and they've grown a lot. So you kind of they connect the dots, right? And obviously by now there are lots of communities, lots of people helping each other out, and they kind of say, hey, this is what you should focus on. And for agencies, it's similar. Like it's always either delivery or sales. So one of the two, and you know that, hey, I could deliver a lot, but I don't have those clients, and that's what you focus on.
Okay. So going to the kind of next part of this then, and talking about, ecom teams specifically, can you just talk through kind of the structure and maybe at different levels? So what does a team look like at, 7, 8, 9 figures in annual revenue?
Yeah. So for 7 figures, it's typically going to be one founder, maybe 2 founders, and they'll have what I call a lot of helpers. So people taking maybe customer support, maybe video editing. So some of the roles that they're not necessarily complicated, but they need to happen. They need to happen at a decent level. So you can find someone generally overseas, if we take it from the States perspective, where you can find great people, but at cheaper prices. But that's typically kind of the 2 functions that you'd outsource. Maybe some agencies around like media buying or whatever the need is. At 8 figures, it's kind of, you start hiring your first directors. So creative strategy, sometimes it's director of growth that owns creatives and media buying and potentially funnels and maybe email marketing, where they work with an email marketing agency. Director of operations at 8 figures is very common. And then for 9 figures, you can start thinking about bringing on executives. And an executive I define as someone who manages several directors. So people sometimes come to me and they say, hey, we need a CMO. And then I ask, how many directors do you have in marketing? They say none. So then you just want a marketing director, or a head of growth or whatever you call it. So, but at 9 figures, typically you already have maybe head of creatives, head of media buying, and then a CMO, for example, starts making sense, or a COO. So those are like the typical, team structures.
Okay. And then how do you make sure that when you're bringing in kind of more senior people, that you don't add kind of more layers of friction and bureaucracy in the business and ultimately kind of like slow things down or break things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something people should keep in mind. Typically, though, again, when the companies I work with, and that's maybe limited experience, but they're growing really fast, and they're like, oh, if we could do this one thing. So, for example, I have a really interesting case right now where the company's absolutely humming their digital products, weight loss, which is a great space, but the one thing that's not working for them is actually email. And so we're looking for someone to manage their emails on a high level. and they're not worried about bureaucracy. They're like, we need to solve this problem. Let's figure it out. Let's maybe even bring on several people or consultants or whatever needs to happen for this problem to be solved, because it is the one bottleneck to their growth. So it hasn't honestly been a huge concern, because people kind of realize, okay, there's a problem in front of them that they're trying to solve. Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of the different stages that we talked about, what would you say are kind of must-have roles at each stage? And are there certain commonalities you see where, people are focusing too late on certain roles or departments?
Yeah, again, I think this like 7 to 8 figures for e-commerce, at least, that's always going to be creative strategy, at least at the current market situation. It hasn't always been the case, but yeah, those are that should be the focus area. Many times it's going to be the founder still handling it, because it is actually true for that business that they'd be able to handle it the best. That's like the biggest unlock I've seen. And then I think I mentioned like these video editors, customer support. It just makes sense, like handing off more and more things that the founder shouldn't be doing, and eventually they would hand off creative strategy as well.
Okay. I notice there seems to be a common thread in some of this where product is never outsourced. And I'm also assuming like key brand messaging is something that should stay with the founder. Is that correct?
Up to a level, I guess. So product, I mean, it depends on the goals, I think. So I know plenty of e-commerce brands that source like reasonable but not great product in China, but they're able to build around it, and they're really good at marketing. And typically that exhausts itself sometimes within weeks, sometimes within months, maybe a couple of years, and then they move on to the next product and they figure out how to market that. And it's just a different company structure. So generally, though, it is true, right? You want to be competitive when it comes to product. But I think product really, it's a tricky one, because it's becoming, especially in the e-commerce world, it's becoming easier and easier to copy. Basically, brand messaging. Yeah, again, some of my clients, they couldn't care about their brand for that same reason, right? They have the infrastructure to move on to the next product or offer really fast.
I want to talk now about kind of changing roles or new roles that you see kind of emerging. Obviously, there's a lot going on, whether it be technology, political changes, whatever. How is that impacting you? And are there kind of new roles that you're seeing that, maybe 3-5 years ago you would never have thought of would exist?
The obvious one is AI for automation. So we're doing our second search specifically for an e-commerce business, where they say, okay, AI is our first focus. We want to see how we can take all of our processes and make them basically more efficient or increase our output. So that's definitely a theme. I mean, I've been working on supply chain and those sort of roles, but with tariffs especially, there are people kind of becoming more interested in that, and it's becoming more of a painful problem, especially if they're heavily involved in China. And then as again, it's not something necessarily that's new, but there's a bigger focus on retention. So people are becoming more interested in that, because I think the Facebook game becomes more and more competitive. And so people, naturally think about, okay, I can't just necessarily be profitable on the first day, or even if I am, I still need to be making money down the line. So that's kind of another trend I'm seeing that people are more and more interested in.
For sure. I want to discuss kind of agency versus in-house and get your thoughts on that. So maybe applying this to the AI space, obviously it's very rapidly moving. I get a lot of outreach from AI agencies that want to kind of come into the business and improve things. Taking that as a specific example, do you think maybe it's better to work with an agency there that's, maybe seeing things across different accounts more up to speed, etc., rather than bringing it in-house? Or what do you think?
I mean, that's, I work for an agency, so that's kind of the pitch, right? I'm sure it's the same for you. I'm not sure. So it's kind of a thing that's like on my to-do list and with a pretty high priority, just kind of going through what it is that we're currently doing and seeing if we can apply AI to it. That's one area where I still feel like I basically spend maybe 3-4 years doing it myself, hands-on, with no help. And I think it's hard to exchange that experience for like a general knowledge of AI, which everyone I think has some. There's no way they could have spent 3 to 4 years working on AI because it didn't exist, right? So at least I've spent 3 to 4 years working on specifically my service. So it depends. At the same time, there's definitely some efficiencies to be gained. So I think it's case by case. But for myself, I'm not tempted because this AI automation, I see it as an asset that I create for my business. And again, that one, I think it's worth doubling down on it and making sure it's really good. If there was someone who I created the AI automations for recruitment companies and I'd actually see their work and see that they've done a really good job, yeah, I consider them for sure.
Okay. And what do you say to kind of brands, maybe just more generally, that are debating, an agency partnership versus an in-house hire?
Yeah, I think people, again, typically they approach me when an agency relationship is no longer working out for them. And there are some agencies, or it's like a typical story where they say, okay, first it went well, but then we feel like they're more managing us rather than driving growth. And that's kind of the frustration that people I talk to have, which I totally get. At the same time, with what you mentioned earlier, right? If you've seen things across many different companies, and I see it in my case that the first time I was hiring a creative strategist, it took us about 6 months because like I had to just really learn the market, and it was a tough search. And then the following search, and within 2 weeks, we had someone just because I knew exactly where to go, right? So there is something to be said about having seen that problem before, having being able to solve it on a high level quickly. So, and one thing I will say about agencies, it's really important to look at their incentives. So there's a really good creative agency. People might realize which one that is, but they have this crazy offer where brands don't pay unless the agency beats the in-house ads. And it's a crazy guarantee, but then they figured out how to deliver on it. And I kind of feel the same way where I give a 12-month guarantee for my clients. And I just started there because I knew it would push me towards creating a really good service. And I think that has worked in my favor. So the incentive side is also really an important piece when choosing an agency.
Okay. And you mentioned that a lot of people come to you after bad experiences with agencies.
Mm.
What are some kind of, I guess, general red flags for agencies that you've seen, and maybe some common kind of issues why people are coming to you?
Yeah, I think it's that thing I mentioned where they are no longer pushing. They're just kind of maintaining, and they're like, okay, this is our process. You're one of our 80 clients. You probably have some sort of spreadsheet of, okay, these clients are green, these are yellow, these are red. Let's focus on the yellow because the red ones we're going to lose anyway. And that's like not how you'd expect your in-house team to approach it. So, and that's a very like kind of cynical way to look at it. But there is a type of agency and that does operate in that way. If I'm talking more on the positive end, I think if you can catch someone who's just starting to basically freelance and has a really really nice portfolio, it maybe doesn't really count as an agency, but again, creative strategy is what comes to mind. And there, I've just come across a few people where they kind of told themselves, I want to do really solid work. I have 2 or 3 clients at a time. So I guess to answer your question, you interview them a little bit, see if it makes sense, see how much attention you'd get, if it's good value for money, kind of make a bit of a skeptical analysis of what it is that they offer.
You said this a few times now. Is creative strategist, is that role kind of the most in demand?
It's huge. It's huge. And maybe I shouldn't talk about it as much because I just don't know if there's necessarily a great way to deliver for it currently, because every e-commerce brand needs it. And then there are not a ton of creative strategists as employees. So the kind of market has fallen behind. There are tons of people who are training great creative strategists. There are tons of nice agencies, brands that are upskilling there. So I think it's getting better, but it's still like hundreds, maybe thousands of brands that compete for dozens of the really, really good creative strategists.
Does that mean that brands should focus more on kind of bringing someone in who's more junior and training them up?
So that's, and again, it depends on the scale, right? So if you're mid 8 figures and kind of it's your bottleneck and you can make a really nice offer, I mean, sure, lots of people from with nice experiences are going to listen. If you're at maybe less than $1 million a month, probably that's where my mind would go. Just having seen it across multiple businesses, I'd probably try and train someone up rather than try and poach someone, because those people have options. And then if I was in that situation for my own company, I'm like, I was really suspicious of anyone who's willing to work with me. And that's that's kind of the situation for smaller brands and creative strategists, because if they're really good, they have so many options. So in that case, it pays to invest a bit more time, but train someone up and also have lower expense in terms of salaries, especially at the start.
Okay. Now let's assume kind of money is no object. What to you is the profile of a great creative strategist?
Yeah, and it depends a bit on the situation, but my kind of favorite hire there is actually, I don't call it creative strategist, I call it creative director. So again, someone who can take the creative team, really think about it strategically, see it from all sides, and decide what it is that we need to do in terms of creatives that we want to go into, in terms of ongoing research and doing that really well, in terms of seeing, okay, how many editors we need, should we focus a bit more on volume or quality, or kind of both, but basically finding that balance. Definitely as of late, introducing AI, because if you compare it even to maybe 6 months ago, the brands that I worked with, they were interested in AI, but not necessarily implementing it. And now it feels like everyone has done it, and they can need 10x their output, maybe even more. So someone who can own that function start to finish, and then they are passionate about it. That's something they enjoy. They like the psychology. They like a bit of ops, right? Figuring out how to make that volume happen at a high quality. So that sort of person, I think, would work out the best.
So we've got kind of the criteria in terms of vetting for that. Do you take an approach of, I want to see kind of their experience and they've done this before at XYZ company, or is it I want them to do kind of certain test tasks and prove to me in this process that they've got the ability?
Yeah, both. Both. So like the easiest, the shortcut that I found, and unfortunately that was a few years into my career as a headhunter, but it's really is creating a list of target companies. So the most relevant companies would have the sort of talent that you're going after. And typically, if you can say to them, hey, you're currently a creative strategist, I can assume that you're doing a really good job, and you could be in line for a promotion for a creative director. And for whatever reason that's not happening at your company, why don't you take the promotion, the salary increase, come on over and do a very similar job, and kind of have the chance to work on a wider scale, and prove yourself more, but also earn more. So that's the number one area. And then always, though, for creative strategists, it's a bit easier. You'll look at their portfolio, and it says a lot, just in terms of the quality and how comparable it is that what the brand is doing currently, or what the brand wants to be doing. And then, but you still always ask them for a test assignment, because it's just, I've had so many experiences where I feel like, oh, the interview is going absolutely great. It's amazing. And then they submit it. I'm like, oh, it's okay, but I'm not thrilled. So yeah, definitely I would always do a test assignment.
Okay. And are there other parts that you'd recommend having in a hiring process aside from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we start with is, most people call it scorecard. I call it, for my consultants, we call that primer. How we do it is that we create basically a document that analyzes the business problem. Okay, why are we even making this hire? What is the bottleneck? What are our expectations? Where the company is in the market? How that hire is going to impact everything? When it comes to scorecard, that's not something we necessarily do, but we see value in. We just do it slightly differently, basically. But you look at the mission of the company, the KPIs, and so forth. So basically, the job number one is understanding what is it that you really need, and that's basically half of the battle. You kind of, if you make a solid decision there, you can find someone to match it really fast, and then you look at those target companies that I mentioned, create a list of those. Then from that, you create a list of people that you want to reach out to. You create a really attractive outreach message that it doesn't even need to be that salesy. It just needs to explain what the company does, what the problem is. If that matches their previous experience, they're likely to respond. And then you mentioned, okay, this is remote or in person or whatever it is in your case. And you mentioned the salary, and then you ask if they'd like to hear more. They're really simple. There's no trickery, because people are kind of, hey, I have this awesome opportunity to get a salary increase. Why wouldn't I ask for more information? So my outreach messages get like, outside of the States, about 50% response rate, in the States about 30%. Then if you imagine that it's a cold message, it's like a crazy good response rate. So but you don't need trickery. You just need to be like kind of upfront and select good people, or kind of relevant people for that role. And from there, they'd see the job description. You would invite them to a screening call. Typically, then a hiring manager would have a chat with them, and then the test assignment would come, and typically paid. And then there would be like a final interview, and that's pretty much the process.
At no point did I hear you say go and post on Indeed.com.
Because I don't do it. So I think so. There's a time and place for that, and I think my kind of rule of thumb is if there's less than 1,000 people in the world that realistically could do the job, I'll reach out to them. I won't expect that limited group of people to go on a job board and find my ad. If there's more than 1,000 people, it could still make sense to headhunt. That's what I do for my business. I just know I get better candidates that way. And I don't have a good process, honestly, for inbound candidates. So people applying. But if there are more than 1,000 people, I think it's very realistic. I see people getting good results with posting job ads. They don't go on Indeed. I think they use LinkedIn organic posts. They use even Facebook advertising. But yeah, it's not completely useless. There's a reason people still do it. But typically for these higher level roles, there are just not that many people who could realistically do it well. So then I don't rely on it. I reach out to them proactively.
Okay. Just playing kind of devil's advocate here. Let's say you were hiring for a thumbnail designer. You'd go to a job board where, YouTube people are, like YouTube jobs. And then I guess it's kind of a spray and pray approach, right? Where it's, thousands of applicants and sift as much as possible.
So I used to have that approach. And then when I first truly got into hiring for my own company, we needed a developer. And we did all these like kind of best practices of creating a really nice job ad and so forth. And we posted it in Latvia, and within 2 weeks, we got 3 applications. And that was really sad. So then that was 2017 or 18, maybe. We discovered these remote job boards. And then within a few months, we got like 10,000 applications for that role. And back then, people, I don't think they were not yet onto this remote work wave, so we were a bit early. But yeah, you can get a ton of applications, and then it's more about being able to judge those applications. Typically, you send the test assignment sooner, so you're more protective of your time. And it's interesting what you can achieve with that scale. And we made some good hires. At the same time, the very best applicants, they're typically already at a good situation. They're like, okay, I'm good. If I don't fully love my situation, at some point someone's gonna approach me, and I'll take that opportunity. I get enough pitches. So that's the other kind of thing that happening with the very best people. They're not necessarily serving the job boards, especially the most senior people, I'd say. So that's something that just has to be kept in mind. And I saw some stats somewhere. I think the source was Zipia, where they said 73% of people who are open to changing a job are not going on job boards. But they're open, but they're not like exploring proactively, because it is a painful process, right? Sending those applications, and then many companies would ghost you or not even have an opening at that point in time. They're like, okay, at some point, something good is going to come up, and then if you reach out to them proactively, you can be that good news that they receive. And the good thing is that you don't have a ton of competition in that moment, right? So, I mean, some people they're looking actively when you reach out, but a lot of people are like, well, I was kind of thinking about it, not looking actively, but yeah, this looked pretty cool. And then it's much better to be the only option than be one of the like 10 options.
In terms of kind of the fit interview where you're judging, personality, attitude, etc., what are you looking for in kind of a good candidate there? So let's assume, 10 out of 10 technical skills. What do you look for on the other side?
Yeah, so two things that come to mind. My favorite assessment is DISC. Some people have their own favorite assessments, but you can kind of know what type of person you're going for. Someone who's like maybe a bit more dominant driving, someone who's a bit more like structured, careful, someone who's a bit more like people oriented. So you kind of sometimes you just ask them to complete that personality assessment. At least for me, when I talk to thousands of people, I can kind of ask a few questions and kind of realize, okay, they're most likely in this sort of bucket, and see if that sort of personality makes sense with the role. The other thing is kind of seeing their track record and seeing how they were solving problems, how they approach it, and just asking more and more questions about what they've done in the past. And if you keep hearing more and keep hearing more things that you like, that's a great sign that, okay, they approach some things in really creative ways. And some people who have really nice kind of top line numbers, and they can say, oh, we grew by, whatever, 300%. But then when you ask them, so how'd you do it? And what were the specific steps you took? They don't really have a good response. You can kind of realize that, oh, there's a good chance that they were around success, but not necessarily the ones driving it. So that's another thing to kind of look out for. So those are the two things that come to mind.
Okay. Am I correct in saying for that first one, you're almost building up like a caricature of, let's say, an ideal sales guy, and then when you're interviewing someone, you're just ticking off that person?
Yeah, and for my own business, what I realized that there are a few characteristics that I share with my team, and basically the one thing that comes to mind first is that we just need people who are meticulous, and that's like we can't do without it. That's my personality. That's what our clients expect of us, and that's the number thing we're checking for. Definitely, they need like strong, basically ability to learn and pick up things quickly. But I think that's a given for almost any role. And then maybe like a secondary thing is that we've all moved countries, we've all lived internationally, and so working for a smaller company, you need some kind of sense of adventure, but that's less what's needed for our job and more what's needed for them to be even interested in our opportunity. But this thing about being meticulous, that's something I realized recently, and might seem obvious, and it does seem obvious to me at least now. But it's like just continuously looking at people who worked out, who didn't work out, and kind of seeing the patterns there.
Okay. Test tasks are obviously hugely important to judge the technical skills. What have you seen in the field that makes for a really good test task?
Yeah, so there, I would say three types. So number one is task specific or job specific task. So in my case, for example, I asked everyone who's joining to source some potential candidates based on a brief, because it's a really important skill. If you don't have that skill, you can forget about everything else there. If you source the wrong type of candidates, it's just not going to work. So that's the basically, if there is something like that, right? So for creative strategy, it doesn't matter if it's a creative strategist, copywriter, a creative director, they need to be able to first recognize, but also create really good scripts. So for that sort of role, you ask them to write a few scripts based on the account. So that's task specific. Then there are audit tasks where you give them basically access to some of the data and look at what basically what they see as improvements or potential things to do. So that's really good at media buying. Financial roles could be good like that, where they give them all the data, kind of, if you have someone to explain it, do that as well. And then ask them to come back with a management report, so that CEO is typically not into the weeds, and they need someone who can kind of explain what's going on. So that's a perfect test task in my mind. And the other thing that's happening there is that they're already spending some time thinking about what's currently going on, how I'd approach it. So it's also really nice for the candidate, where they can realize, oh, these are the sort of problems I see, the problems, and these are the sort of problems I can actually solve and want to be working on. And then the third type is kind of similar to audit, but slightly different. And it's creating a plan of action for the maybe first 3 months or 6 months. And that's pretty typical for marketing roles. So head of growth or something like that is kind of, or maybe head of ops even, laying out what it is that they do month by month and how they approach it. And they're like, the more detail they can give, the better, because these days it's really easy to ask ChatGPT to create a reasonably looking plan. So then you kind of look at the nuance and how deep they've gone into it, and yeah, how much they've considered for that sort of plan.
Okay. You touched on it there. How do you kind of filter for people that are using ChatGPT, or maybe even getting someone else to do the test task for them?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really, I don't think I've been in a situation where someone else has done it, especially for these like more senior roles. If they use ChatGPT and it's great output, I couldn't care less. I mean, that's awesome. Good for you. You're being efficient. If it's just kind of, sending basically ChatGPT output, that's really easy to see. So as long as it's solid work, something that meets your standard, yeah, why not? That's it's what they do on a job as well. So that's great if they can use ChatGPT on a high level.
Are there any kind of red flags that when you see, you're instantly like, no, and in your, in instant decline?
So I think in the interview process, the biggest one is so first I would, it's not the first thing that I'm going for, but pretty early in the conversation I'd ask, so what has been your biggest win in this past role? And if they don't have a good answer, I guess I'll entertain them for a little bit, trying to kind of get them on the right path. But generally, if they don't have a big win, you've just been in the seat, right? You haven't really accomplished anything. So that's certainly something to look out for. And then definitely, you should watch out for what I mentioned earlier. This kind of, okay, they might have a win that appears really nice, but then you start going deeper. So how'd you accomplish it, and what were the steps that you took? What was your role? What was maybe someone else's role? And trying to understand that whether they drove that success. And if they did, that's awesome. If they didn't, I mean, it still might be good for your company, but you just need to be a bit careful. And then also a revealing question is asking why they left the previous company, why they're considering leaving now. And it has to make sense. And again, talking to a lot of people, by now I can kind of see that, okay, this story does not make sense. That's not how things happen in reality. If everyone else suddenly became toxic in the company, maybe it's the candidate that was actually toxic. So I mean, those things happen, and if everything else is looking great, sure, you could entertain it, but then you just become really careful.
We hired a candidate last year that was exactly that. So everything was never their fault, and they'd worked at, I've been fired from kind of 3 jobs where it was really toxic, and everyone else in the business was horrible. I ignored that.
Yeah,
So that's great advice.
So now you're the fourth guy on the list that's also really toxic, I bet. So
Yeah. Cool. How do you think then? So you found this ideal candidate. They've got through the process. How do you think about, and do you get involved in as well? Because I'm not sure if you do, but onboarding.
Onboarding, yeah, not so much. So part of my job is making sure that they will actually have good onboarding, because again, I give a generous guarantee. So I want the candidate to be successful, but I more ask about it, and typically people have a good plan. For myself, I recently worked on that, and basically it's almost like creating an online course for that position, taking them through everything that they need to know, explaining in as much detail as I can, all the possible considerations they might have, suggest more resources that they could go after if they want to go deeper. So, and that's already getting really good feedback from the person that joined recently. And previously, I did that over several months, just like here and there. They'd be like, "Oh, this is what I was supposed to do." I'm like, "Yeah," and now I've just like condensed it all into like a 4-hour video with some written material. So that's my approach, and that's the main thing that should be there. Obviously, you want to give them access and have some social event and whatnot. But I think the more context you can give them, basically, if you can compress their learning from weeks and months into like days and hours, that's what you should be going for.
Okay. So will you be launching a creative strategist course soon and building your own pipeline?
No, I don't know. I don't know about much about creative strategy. I do have one guy who's basically doing that. So I'm really happy about that because then we can place some people from that course. But recruiters, I think probably the optimal business model is still to keep it in-house and have them work for you. But if they kind of decide to go out on their own and they can use my method, I'm happy for them. So, I mean, maybe potentially definitely has crossed my mind that it is something I've learned and something I could share with the world. But for now, it's I'm keeping it in-house.
Maybe one day soon. In terms of kind of thinking about this onboarding process from the company's perspective, what should they be? So aside of training material on the role, what should they be doing like in the first week to a month of new person joining?
Yeah, and and I'm talking from a perspective of having a team of two, and just like trying to figure it out onboarding for myself. Again, I just want them to get up to speed as fast as humanly possible. So I mentioned those learning materials. The other thing that we do is we have a call every single day for an hour, at least the first 2 months, maybe first 3 months, and then we progressively make it shorter and shorter. But the idea there is that, again, as soon as possible, we want to get that person up to speed. So that same goes for any work that they're submitting. I'm not sitting there saying, "Hey, you were supposed to be this really independent person." I'm like, yes, partially. I think you do fine, but once you do the work, I'll review it and you'll learn from it quicker. So I'm really kind of ready to double down and really invest in them. That, with that said, I do have an agency. It is essentially a people business. If I don't have good people, I really don't have anything. So it might be a bit different in e-commerce where there's so many different things going on, and you do want someone who can kind of jump in. But still, hiring someone is expensive. Having a bad hire is super expensive. So in my mind, I do everything I can to maximize that person.
Okay. And just in terms of the technical stuff then, so would you recommend companies, once they've gone through, the candidate has gone through the training material, should they be testing the new hire on that or not? And then when should you be expecting to hit like KPIs and start introducing that kind of stuff?
Right. No, I think the best test is in the battlefield, right? So, they're my employees are talking to clients from the first day, and then sometimes with publicly, sometimes privately, I just say, "Hey, this is what I would have said," or they send me candidates, and I go through them, and sometimes I have to sometimes I archive 10%, sometimes 50%, sometimes 90%, and I'm if it's 90%, I'm really glad because that's a learning opportunity. And otherwise, like that round of outreach would have gone nowhere, right? So that means, okay, there's a huge kind of learning potential there. So in terms of like hitting KPIs from my experience, someone who's like switched on and doing well. I mean, even my current employee, I was really the one that started just now. I was really pleased with how she did even on the first day for someone new. But then I think within 3 months she'll be like fully independent and ready to rock it. So I think 3 months maybe to kind of answer your question briefly.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. I want to kind of flip this process on its head now and go back to the beginning. So let's say kind of a founder has come to you and said, something is wrong with the business. How do you identify the bottleneck and then decide, who the hire or what position the hire needs to be to fix that?
Yeah, and I think here you would look at what's working for other businesses. So, and also like many times people just come to me with when they have that bottleneck ready. Sometimes they don't, and then I just continuously ask questions. And the more complex the business, I think e-commerce structures can be relatively simple sometimes. But for example, for a SaaS business, when you have the marketing team, you have the sales team, you have the tech team, and then the customer success and whatever else, it can get quite complicated. And then I've had sessions where I talk to business owners and for 2 hours straight, I'm just asking a bunch of questions, and eventually, like things have to make sense. I mean, that's my approach, and then you just ask as many questions as needed to get there. So I don't know if I have like a good framework for that, but that's typically what's been working well. And I think one important thing, and that's like our company value as well. We call it seek truth, but it's like if you're able to ask these uncomfortable questions and but with the intention of getting to the truth and getting to the root of the problem. I think that's really important, and that's something I've seen also in hiring, where over the years I've just learned that if someone comes to me and they say, "Hey, we need this like head of growth," when I started out, I'd be like, "Awesome, I can get you someone," and now I'm like, "Why? What are you expecting of that person? How that's going to fit into your business?" So um, I don't have a more advanced framework than just an in-depth conversation, I'd say, for this.
Okay. And do you charge for those therapy sessions out of interest?
I guess I could, but I don't. I do lead into. They typically lead into nice business for me, so I think they're worth it. But yeah, anyone's listening who has like a reasonably sized business, I'm generally like happy to chat. So reach out.
Cool. Okay, so I feel like since COVID, the world has become, or the workplace has become a lot more kind of international and globalized. Have you seen that shift, and would you agree with that kind of statement?
Yeah, 100%. So, and I think there are certain roles where it's just smart to hire outside of your country. And it might go both ways. If they're like maybe customer support or video editing, that might be good in maybe Philippines or India or Pakistan or some of the kind of countries where the salaries are cheaper. And sometimes you just have to hire in the States if you want the best results. It's more expensive for sure, but you also just it's what your business needs. So I think it's gone both ways, where people are generally just more they're more open to being international for sure.
Okay. And then you mentioned kind of the Philippines, India, Pakistan for
Hmm.
CS type kind of roles.
Yeah.
What other regions would you kind of recommend people look at, and are there certain kind of correlating job fields that are associated with those places?
Yeah. So my kind of number one country, that's a tiny country, like 3 million people, but specifically for e-commerce is Lithuania. So they have like at least three like nine-figure e-commerce companies. They have several eight-figure companies. So they're doing an outstanding job. Somehow it's become a talent hub. So I mean, typically you look by the company names anyway, and you can figure out which ones those are. But that's a place where I hire disproportionately, and they also have some awesome like tech startups. So they've got something right for sure. But more broadly, kind of yeah, Philippines for customer support makes sense to me. Some of the cheaper roles, maybe VAs as well, and but then kind of for I would say mid-level roles, sometimes even kind of directors and executives, but definitely Eastern Europe is a great place. You can get people with great attitude. They're hungry. They don't have as many opportunities. Um, and when they hear from you, they're really excited to kind of take it further. And then that would go for all kinds of roles, from marketing to ops, maybe less so in sales, but product. Yeah, I mean, Eastern Europe is my kind of default. Latin America can be good too. Can be really nice alignment with the US. And then for these top tier roles, again, creative strategy is a good one, where especially when you need to know the local culture a little bit and have the feel for it and kind of what would resonate with people or wouldn't. And sales, I think, can be quite similar, although it's possible to do from other countries as well. But especially creative strategy, they're typically higher than in the US, especially for these like top tier brands.
Okay. You mentioned Eastern Europe. Are there certain countries within the region that you look at a lot?
Lithuania is on top of the list. Serbia is huge. And then there's a Wikipedia page that you can Google, and it's like countries of Europe by salary. And then you can draw a line where basically there are countries with lower salaries and higher salaries. And I typically go for the countries with the lower salaries because the talent, education, it's all comparable. And especially if they work for an international company and they've been around it. For the same amount of money, you can get better talent. So I'm not even necessarily looking at it as a discount. I'm just looking, what can I get for my money? And you can get some just outstanding people over there. So basically, Eastern and Southern Europe is my go-to.
Okay. What would you recommend, for a brand owner that's got, people from a whole host of different countries? What would you recommend for them to do to kind of build team culture across different kind of people?
So, I mean, an obvious thing is that you want to be reasonable with time zones, and so you can go pretty broad, but typically it's at most 2 out of the 3. So either Americas is where you build your team, Europe, or then Asia and Australia. So typically you wouldn't just go anywhere in the world. So you pick 2 out of 3. So maybe Europe and Americas is the most typical. Sometimes Europe and Asia. I've seen less of Asia and the US and Americas. But you kind of want to be a bit reasonable when it comes to time zone. Make sure that there's some alignment. When it comes to those like cultural aspects, generally, kind of my type of company that I work with is smaller in terms of team size, but definitely kind of overachieving in terms of scale that they've been able to achieve. And that if you follow the math, it kind of means that the revenue or profit per employee is really high. And there, the kind of connecting factor is that, hey, we're all doing a really good job. We're all bringing in our A game, basically. So that's the thing that is the unifying factor. And then past that, yeah, I think there are probably some kind of interpersonal things that you can think about. But if you have that foundation of okay, we're all doing our very best and we're all really passionate about what we're doing, then I think it's a really good start.
Okay. And what would you say to a business owner that was maybe in two minds about, team culture being entirely dependent on we're, A-star employees, we're going to push things on output, push the envelope and achieve versus more of a kind of balanced workplace with more of a focus on kind of team building and stuff?
Either of those can be a reasonable choice. So for me, it's just a bit hard to be around people who are not like 100% bought in. That's how I work, and that's how most founders are, and that's what they expect from their team. In that case, just be sure that you have something good to offer in return, and that it's actually worth it.
Cool. Okay, so what would you say to a founder that's across different cultures? What can they do to kind of make the machine run smoothly?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one thing to watch out for that's kind of organizational and maybe obvious, but should be kept in mind is where the team is based. So you just don't want to spread it out too much. So typically there are people don't go to more than two out of the 3 parts of the world. So Americas, Europe, or Asia and Australia, just because of time zones and you want to have some overlap between your teams. And yeah, so that's kind of an organizational but thing to watch out for. So when it comes to culture, what I've seen is that people that work with me, again, they tend to have maybe smaller teams, but they're at pretty high scale. So if you kind of follow the math, and revenue or profit per employee is pretty high, and that generally means that they're all very high performing, great output, and that's the sort of uniting thing between them. And then there might be some maybe smaller cultural differences. But if you have the foundation of, okay, we're all here, we're going to do a really great job, I think that's a really solid start to building a nice company culture.
Okay. And then before we kind of start to round things off, my question here was going to be about, assuming there's a senior role opened up, how do you think about kind of promoting internally versus going externally to fill that spot?
Yeah, so I would always try to see if I have someone internally that I could promote. That's like free onboarding, basically, right? And you generally want to motivate your team and give them chances to kind of up their career and see that you can actually grow within the company. So that's basically the first thing that would cross your mind. There are cases where you can't do it. So uh, in one case, the company just might be growing too fast, and you don't have enough people that are able to do it. And kind of the very best people have already been promoted. This is essentially the situation. A different situation might be when you kind of just don't have the talent you need. You need to work on the kind of next level, and then typically you do plug someone from a company that's basically has gone through it already. And that's when it makes sense to go outside when you don't really have anyone. But at first, I would always look at the current team and see if someone could step in those shoes.
Okay. Thank you. I want to round things off by talking about AI. So I know you mentioned before, improving or increasing output and the work, especially on the creative strategy side, the uplift that you'll see from AI. Can you just talk through other roles that you think AI enhances or maybe even replaces in an ecom brand?
Yeah, so the other one that comes to mind is definitely media buying. And I think that's already happened. So when I was running Facebook ads, there was a lot of budget adjustments and kind of manual analysis, and some of that still remains. And especially for the larger brands, the ones that spend millions per month, you can still squeeze out some nice juice, and the position's worth it. But for many brands who are not at this crazy scale, it makes sense to currently at least have someone who's outsourced, and that's a direct impact of AI. So that's one position where it's happened already, and I think most people are aware. There's lots of things you can do in customer support, and that's another big one. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes into video editing as well. I mean, really anything that has to do with some sort of volume is I wouldn't say at risk. It's subject to being enhanced with AI, and even in my business. So how I think about it is the things that have to happen more times are more likely to be taken over by AI. So what I mean is, for every role you typically select more than 100 people. So that means that has to happen 100 times per hire. So probably tens of thousands times per year. That's something that AI can get really good at. But then let's say we have, just for round numbers, 100 roles, creating 100 job descriptions because there's one per role. That becomes a bit more difficult, although there's still ways to use the AI. And then even further down the line, you only make one hire, and that's later in the process, and that's even harder to kind of use AI for. So whatever is happening a ton, I think AI can be great at learning. But these kind of decisions that have long-term consequences and don't happen that often, that's very unlikely to be replaced by AI. At least, you never know, right? A couple of years ago, we said that we're so far away, but I personally don't see that happening for a while. So,
For sure. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you for taking the time.
It was awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me.
What type of businesses do you work with? Revenue number, sector, etc. And if people, fulfill those criteria, where can they find you and hear more?
Yeah, so I help kind of exciting scaling companies get the best talent possible. So typically that's for e-commerce businesses, so selling physical goods online. Typically, I start making sense at maybe 2 million per month. For other businesses that are within the e-commerce niche, so it could be some software products, for example, or even agencies. They don't need as high of a scale in terms of revenue to make sense. and that's typically maybe starting at 3 million per year and going up. But e-commerce is the kind of general domain that I'm in. And then in terms of reaching out, LinkedIn's really easy. You can go to my website, recruitermill.com. You'll find my contact information. Just reach out and I'll be happy to chat.
Perfect. Okay. Ugis, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Scaling an ecom brand is hard. That's why we're on a mission to share as much info as we can to help make it easy. From weekly interviews with the biggest names in the space, to case studies, brand breakdowns, and tips and tricks, and much, much more. Subscribe so you don't miss out.